so let's move on to this last topic. This is going to be a fun one, I think. This segment, the reason why I brought this up is because um, the only really, content I consume is just like later at night I put on YouTube and it just, it'll recommend me some things. One of the videos it recommended me was, uh, you know, gaming in the 90s or something like that. So I watched a video and it really was like nostalgic for me because I was, I guess I'm like an old guy here. I'm 36 years old now. So I did grow up in the 90s. I was the 90s kid, and seeing them talking about the NES and the Sega Genesis and all that, really brought back some nostalgia for me. But then I was thinking like, all right, so the 90s had like these certain games. They were mostly the 2D games. They didn't have too much depth to it. Uh, a lot of them you couldn't save. You had to just whenever you shut it off, you were done until you went back on and played again. So that was kind of like what the '90s gamings were all about. And then the 2000s brought kind of a different era to gaming. The 2010s brought another one, and then now we're in the 2020s and going into the 2030s. So, like, I wanted to ask you guys, Two Hayes, I'll start with you, but like, what do you like remember or how do you think of these decades of gaming? Like I know you're a little younger than me, but you might have been around in the 90s to remember some of 90s gaming, right? So what do you remember from like the 90s gaming versus 2010s, and then what do you think we're gonna when we look back at the 2020s or even the 2030s, what do you think we're gonna be saying about that era of gaming?
So starting off, I start off with the Super Nintendo, Mario Kart, all of those, Donkey Kong. As a younger child, I grew into Turok, NTH, DTD, CRTD, TRK. That's the master cheat for Turok. So
Like I
I don't
said,
know how I still
I don't know any
remember
of those
that,
guys.
but yeah. Turok, but that was a super fun game for me, and that was on Nintendo 64. So all of these are on console. So I was
Yeah.
really a console player for a while, and then what really opened my eyes up to PC was the 2000s, and that's multiplayer. Halo.
Yeah. I played a
Like,
lot of Halo.
so everyone, like, my buddy had an Xbox, and he's like, I got Xbox Live, and like that's what put me on to the online world. After that, World of Warcraft came because I was like, oh my gosh, online games I can play with other people, and that's what really set me off. And then I went down the WoW route. But for 2020 games, I would say about 2010, it really went to the battle royal genre was a big one. But just graphics and all, like, I remember the first time I could see a player's face playing Madden, and that was so huge to me. Like, oh my gosh, I can see his face. So just the graphics and all was really cool to see. And we're at that point now where it's pretty much good enough for everybody. Like, and might that might be an old guy saying there, like, yeah, it's good enough for everybody now. Like, you should have seen it when I was a kid. But that and so yeah, 2020. I think we're stepping into Ready Player One stuff. Like, I think
Twenty or
we're
2030?
well, I'm just saying we're in the 2020s. In the next 10 years, 2030, we're
Yeah.
stepping into the realms. Like, you can kind of like keep your assets. You can make money playing a game. Like when we were kids, like you're not gonna make money playing Donkey Kong. Like, you know
No.
what I mean? And that's actually the realm now. Like, instead of the Super Bowl, we might start seeing League or some kind of crazy tournaments in Apex. Like, who knows? Illuvium. I think that's where we're headed to, and I think Illuvium's got already a head start on that. That's why I'm so bullish on this project. It's because I think they're a bit ahead of the curve, and especially with everything being interoperable in the future, especially more because I know that you're wanting more of that. And hi, Jeff. But yeah, I can't wait. And that was kind of just a quick roundup of my gaming experience there, just kind of having fun. And yeah, that's
Yeah,
about our
no,
guide on that one.
no, yeah, that's funny. I mean, I'd say mine was a little different. I do remember. So my first gaming system was in the '90s was Sega Genesis. So I had a neighbor who had a what is it, an NES. So I'd go over there and we'd play NES. They'd come over to my house. We'd play Sega Genesis. When we got into the 2000s, what I remember is Halo a lot. I did play Halo a lot, but I used to have a buddy that used to throw like these Halo parties where we'd all go over and they'd be like everyone brings their Xbox, and then he had like eight. Everyone would bring TVs too, and there'd be like eight different TVs set up in different rooms, all facing different directions. Because you had to play like on LAN, that the landlines, I think it was called, before you could before they had the online gameplay. So, and that's something that the younger generation they'll never know. Jimbo, I don't even know if you know doing that. Were you doing that? You
The
didn't have to do
landline
that.
parties were the best. The
Nah, you're
landline
old as
parties are
hell.
the best.
See,
By the time
I
I even knew how
Fight
to
the
use the
power.
internet, that was already a thing. Like we could
dude.
already hook up and play against other people.
Hey,
So
I'll
yeah,
say
and
I think my generation is the best generation ever because we experienced so many things that you guys will never experience. But I don't know about you two,
you
Hayes.
guys
I think you're
are a
closer to
bunch of
my age.
libtards, though, to be fair. But anyways,
Yeah, what do you tell me
so
your
like
gaming
the
experience starting out with the internet and you already had everything
He
by the time
started
you
off
were
with
starting off
Roblox.
starting off in the 90s, considering I was born in 96. So I just remember playing Pokemon before I could read, literally. Like I
Let's
was 2 years
go.
old playing
yeah.
Pokemon.
That
And
was a big thing for me too.
and I didn't play a ton of games. Usually I would like fixate on one specific game. So in the 90s, it was 90s and early 2000s, I was playing Pokemon. I think around 2006, 2007, I started playing RuneScape. I played that for probably around until like the 2010s, mid 2010s, 2015. I started playing League of Legends. I turned into a pretty much a demon. I was an evil person when I played League of Legends. That's why I don't play it anymore. And I mean, here we are. We're 2022, 2023. We started playing Illuvium, and I don't play any other games. I barely play games at all, but if it is, it'll be Illuvium.
Yeah. Illuvium is actually my first PC game, believe it or not. I was always a console player. I was a console and mobile player. I played games on my phone when that started becoming a big thing. I had Xbox in the past. I've always been a Nintendo guy. The biggest game that I was in for like the longest period of time was Super Smash Bros. I used to play that on all of the systems going up from I'm sure I had it on N64, but definitely from the Melee version on GameCube all the way up to
GameCube
the
was OG. Yep.
yeah, that was
Love
the
the
game I was
GameCube.
like that was the game I was still hooked on when I first found out Illuvium. And then since then I've, tapered off and I probably haven't played in a couple of years at this point. But Smash Bros was a big part of my gaming growing up. But yeah, now it's Illuvium. Now I'm into that the blockchain crypto gaming side of things. And yeah, when we get into the 2030s, I hope people are looking back and being like we look back to the mid to late 90s when Pokemon came out and we're just like in the 90s you didn't know how big of a deal that was, but you look back now and you're saying like that was a very big deal. I hope we get into 2035, 2040 and we're looking back and being like 2022, 2023 when Illuvium was really setting the bar for crypto gaming. Like I really hope we're looking back at Illuvium being like the same way we look back at Pokemon now. Like they kicked it off and in 2035 we're in full gear where if you can't own your assets in a game, the game's just going to fail because everybody just expects to own their assets.
I think that's the way it's going. That's the way I want it to go. I think every gamer does, just kind of something to put back. And I think it goes into back in the day, they didn't realize people were going to be putting this much time into games. Like some people, that's what they enjoy doing. Like that's fine. Like you know what I mean, and spend all that time. And it's really cool if you put all this time into something, and then like, oh, I'm tired of playing this exact game. I'm going to switch. You have something to show for it, whether it's money or assets or something like that. And I think that's really going to make the future of gaming there. And that's when I say, like, we're getting ready closer to Ready Player One. Kieran's kind of mentioned in ILV there might be some hidden alluvials out there, something like that, like a hidden chest or something crazy. So that's really fun too to Think about like there might be a one-on-one like actual alluvial out there. Like how crazy would that be? That's life-changing stuff right there for anybody. So
my favorite Pokemon was always Mew. It was like
oh yeah,
the first generation, the mystical, legendary, whatever it's called, and still to this day, like Mew is my favorite Pokemon. So I hope there's a version of Mew as an alluvial that's just not out yet. I hope they just come out with it.
it might be
I don't care.
hiding. Maybe it's
I
not
don't
caught
care.
yet. You know.
Right? Yeah, I don't care how expensive that one is. Like, I'm gonna get my hand on whatever it is, and I hope it's a little cute one like Mew. I don't want it to be some just giant ogre-looking thing.
With
I
the
want
meat
a
hog
little.
hanging down.
Yeah, I want a little Mew. Give me my Mew.
I want
All
the
right.
hog. I personally,
You,
but I
you
mean,
want the big guy? Oh, that's how it works. Who's gonna win it? I think it's gonna be Jimbo. Jimbo.
I don't know.
I would feel bad.
If we win it, are you keeping it or you want to respin? Up to you. I'll send it to you.
Let's wait and see.
No, it's gonna be
Tick,
Jimbo.
tick, tick,
I
tick.
No,
rigged
no.
it for Jimbo. Oh!
SoCal.
SoCal, me
Nice
homie.
going to SoCal. We've seen you here before in chat. We appreciate you
Yeah.
sticking
It's been
along
around
so
for a
long,
while.
SoCal.